to Recipes for Impact. This is a storytelling series that shines a spotlight on the incredible work of key leaders driving transformational change in smallholder farms and food systems around the globe. I'm Talin Say, and I'm thrilled to invite you into this space where you'll hear inspiring stories about people and projects that are making a real difference. Of his many projects, which include spiritual leadership development, healing democracy, and spiritual development in the context of higher education, our guest today really enjoys helping to build an ecosystem for the spiritual development of children and youth. Prior to his work at the Fetzer Institute, he has held numerous teaching and leadership positions in educational institutions in China and the US. Our guest has a passion towards working with young people, naturally including his own two children. And in his spare time, he plays basketball and daydreams about playing for the New York Knicks. So please help me welcome Senior Program Officer at the Fetzer Institute and aspiring basketball star, XIAOAN Li. Welcome, XIAOAN.
Thank you so much, Taryn, for that very warm welcome. I'm honored. I'm here to have a conversation with you, so let's bring it on.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited as well. I'd like you to share about your personal journey. What has shaped your path to Fetzer and your understanding of the intersection between transformation of self and transformation of society?
Yeah, I don't know if you have all the time when you just to answer this question. Get me really thinking. So I grew up in one of the most mountainous area in southern China, Hunan province to be more exact. I remember that a village with 700 people or so, all surrounded by mountains, by water, and by all the good memories from ancestors and the people living around all of us. And we didn't have electricity until I think I finished my college already. And we didn't have a modern sense of drivable road until early 2000. So my whole childhood was really, can you imagine that just get up when sun rises and go to bed when sun sets every day. It's very organic way of working. From very early on, I felt that how we see the world really shapes how we live in it. And my own path has always been about bridging the inner way of seeing which with the outer way of how we be, serve, and change the world. And that dimension has really prepared me well for my journey to the Fetzer Institute, which I joined roughly around 15 years ago. Has been a fantastic stage of my life where I be having the privilege of working class education, and I'm now able to lead the work in environment. Seemingly two separate sectors of the world, right? No, these two spaces actually are exactly where transformation of self and society meet most directly. You cannot separate them. For me, it is not about policies or programs, but more about worldview. I know well enough right now when we cultivate inner awareness, when we cultivate compassion and reverence for life, which is everyone and everything in the world we're living in, we naturally act just differently in the world. Something I have to say and to share about the Fetzer Institute a little bit more, because I have been so drawn by a guiding purpose. We call the Fetzer Institute guiding purpose, which is a statement that is so foundational to our own institution and any work that we do at the Fetzer Institute. It goes, to awake into and serve spirit for the transformation of self and society with three critical principles: wholeness of reality, freedom of spirit, and unconditional love, as well as the integration of inner life of mind and spirit and outer life of action and service. I don't know if I remember seeing any other statement that is more beautiful, more clear, and more inspirational than this one. And it states so well about the inner and the outer. They are not separate. They mirror and reinforce each other. The transformation that begins within us is what ultimately allow communities and the systems and the larger society, as much as our individual self, to heal and to grow.
I could get lost in your stories, John. It is amazing how you express this journey and the mirror, as you said, between the inner and the outer. And I'd like to stay on Fetzer's work because they've recently launched a new strategy for the environmental sector, exploring how reconnecting with the natural world, food, and each other in sacred reciprocal relationships can address the poly crisis our world is experiencing. Can you share more about this work and what you're hoping to achieve?
Indeed, thank you for being following us and the work we do. Our new environment strategy is intentionally rooted in a simple but a radical idea that environmental crisis, at its very core, it's a spiritual crisis, it's a crisis of a relationship. Because we observed by looking around that we have become so disconnected from nature, from one another, and from the sacred dimension of life itself. With that being critically aware, and which then led us to our goal. Our goal is to categorize a sacred centered transformation, particularly including worldview transformation. What do we mean by that? It's a shift from seeing the earth as a resource to seeing it as a living community we belong to. We're talking about we are part of the nature. We actually trying to say we are nature. There's no separation whatsoever. That means we're partnering with spiritual innovators, farmers, indigenous leaders, scientists, and storytellers who are weaving these sacred values back into food, into land, and climate. So we hope to help people to remember what it means to live in the right relationship with the soil, with the sacred, and with each other. We choose to believe by doing so, we can respond to the poly crisis that you spoke about, not just with the new system, but rather with a renewal of the heart and the soul.
Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate the work that Fetzer does and the spiritual approach to it all. I'd like to ask about these spiritual solutions and collective actions. So, how can spiritual solutions and collective action transform food systems, which is what, this shifting the food systems community is about? How can we cultivate compassion, trust, love, wholeness, and interconnectedness in order to transform the food systems into a system that is more just and serving of people?
Another outstanding question. I'm gonna just kind of scratch the surface by trying to answer your question in terms of how can spiritual solutions and the connected actions indeed, hopefully, ultimately transform food systems in the world. I personally and the Fetzer Institute as a collective believe the first step out of many options is to remember that spirituality is not something separate. Spirituality is not separate from the system change at all. Rather, it is something would make transformation we're all seeking more sustainable and more human. We're talking about food system. We understand why that is important because it is one of the most tangible ways we experience interconnection every day. As humans, we consume, we plant, we grow, we process, we receive every step of the way before we have a plate of food. Keep in mind, not everybody is able to have their own plate of food every day. Let's just say between scarcity and abundance, we're somewhere in this long journey. But every step of the way of the process, what we eat, how it's grown, and who it nourishes all reflect our spiritual values. That's where the word of equity really is important to us. Spiritual solutions begin with our own inner work. What I mean by that is cultivating stillness, gratitude, and compassion, and a sense of belonging. But when they take roots through connective actions, right? Connective actions meaning communities, organizations, and the world come together. When community come together to grow food, to share meals, to restore soil and care for one another. In those moments that we believe trust and love stop being abstract ideas, they become actually practices we live by. It's if we can ground our food system in the world in compassion rather than in competition, and in a reciprocal relationship rather than extractions, then we begin to really heal not only our relationship with the planet, but really also relationship with each other. That is the vision we hold at the Fetzer Institute, that a sacred centered transformation of food system can be both a pathway and a reflection of a more loving world. I hope I answer your question, Turning. You're not giving me an easy time at all. Thank you, though.
You answered it beautifully. You rose to the challenge. Sharon. I have one last question just to hear more story from you, if you don't mind, before we wrap up. I mentioned earlier your love of basketball, so you could have easily become, I suppose, a sportsman rather than the work you do now, though we are quite lucky to have you in the position that you're in. Given what you know now, the challenges you've seen, the work that's been accomplished, the road ahead, if you could go back to the start, what advice would you give yourself? If you were speaking to someone at the start of their journey, reflecting on where you were at the beginning, what advice would you give to get them to take those next steps?
Thank you to that powerful question. You get me thinking about how my whole journey started from the most mountainous area, a small village setting where I was part of the nature and I was actually nature in so many ways. When I'm thinking about there's various opportunity along the journey people can help discover themselves by being part of something that is very meaningful. We emphasize about why the relationship remains to be the key and the core and the foundation to the work we do. We talk about individual awareness, we talk about collective awareness, and then now it's time to add ecological awareness to it. That is more than just an idea or a concept. I'm talking about actually get the hands dirty by touching the soil as much as we can. We were born have that innate capacity to make connections, knowing there's so much other lives within the natural world. My some of my concern is the global becoming more urbanized in so many ways. Let's pick any big city in the world. New York, London, San Francisco. How many of the urban public school students are able to actually understand where the food actually coming from? Then they know they are more than just consumers. They have to understand to what extent the integral relationship with all other living beings, including plants and the food. I guess just going back in time, if I had another opportunity, I probably not going to change anything. Be the village boy tending to the buffalo for almost 10 years of my time, and that kind of intimacy was the worldview I was exposed to. And I will never forget. This is what I carry around when I do the work.
Thank you, Sharon. And I must say, I agree with you wholeheartedly that every step you've taken from that mountainous village to where you are now has led to the accomplishments and the passion to continue. So I'm happy to hear you wouldn't change a thing. Well, this has been one of the most inspirational times I've had to sit and listen to stories. And I'm so happy that you could join us and share on this. And I know that the community will take much from this as well. So I do want to thank you for your time and the space that you've helped me to create.
Thank you, Tarnin, for spending the time and listening to me so deeply. I feel appreciated and heard. Thank you once again.